hate the way Bella talks. I hate Edward's hair. I hate the way he drives his car. I hate it when he stares. I hate Jacob's lack of clothes and the way Edward reads minds. I hate Twilight so much it makes me sick. It even makes me rhyme. I hate it the way vampires are always right. I hate it when Bella lies. I hate how Jacob's chapter titles make me laugh. Even worse, baby names that make me cry. I hate it that I own all the books, but mostly I hate the way I don't hate it. Not even close. Well, maybe a little bit.
Hello friends, my name is Marines, and as part of the 31 Days of Twilight project that I'm organizing on snarksquad.com, I've put together a series of videos on the subject. I did an open call on Twitter for anyone who was interested in and willing to talk about their experiences with Twilight. On Snark Squad, we very specifically look at things critically, and we examine them very carefully. It's really media criticism with a side of humor where we can find it. I thought it would be interesting if, as a kind of other side of that, we just talked to people who were interested in Twilight as it was coming out or afterwards when it really blew up and get their side of the story. Over the month of October, we'll be talking about the Twilight fandom, how people participated in the fandom, if they ever considered themselves fan or if they still do, plus how people view the problematic aspects in Twilight or if they think that it's problematic at all and how they kind of reconcile that with being fans if they are. So it's a whole bunch of topics that we'll be covering, but first I thought it'd be great to start with an introduction and just hear from all of our participants how they heard about Twilight and when they first read it.
Hey guys, my name is Ashley. I'm from the channel Tea Leaves and Bookbindings, and I love Twilight.
Hi, I'm Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. Let's talk about Twilight.
Hello everybody, it's Rebecca here at YM Mermaids, and this is my Twilight story.
Hi, my name's Arthur and my channel is Chapter Select.
Hi guys, I'm Trina from the channel Between Chapters, and I'm here with my friend.
My name is Samantha and I am Friday on Biggest Beauty Project, which is a collab channel of plus size women.
Hello, this is Stephanie at Shy Notebooks.
Hi, Dallas here. I'm here to talk about Twilight.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah. I vlog over at the BookTube channel, Stacks and Scones.
Like most parties, I was late to the one for Twilight. However, unlike other parties, Twilight was not one worth attending.
So for the entirety of this video, I, as a Twilight fan, will be wearing my Twilight hoodie that I paid 50 bucks for, because that is what fans of Twilight do, is spend insane amounts of money on Twilight merchandise.
When the first movie trailer came out, that was the first time I heard about Twilight. This was like the end of college for me, so I was kind of like slightly out of the loop with like the YA and this was like a resurgence of YA for a lot of time, like for a majority of YA anyway. It was kind of not as popular at the time, and I was super into Harry Potter and I wasn't gonna read like Twilight. When that came out and it was Rob Pattinson in the movie, like I was like, I've seen this face before. I've seen this face before. And as soon as I realized it was Cedric Diggory, I was done. I was sold. I was like, okay. And being the book nerd that I am, I said, I need to read the book first. And so I had a few months to do this, and as soon as I did, I was immediately just wrapped up with Twilight. I was obsessed.
I actually heard about Twilight after the movie had come out, and it was one of those things where I work at a TV station, and so I had heard about it, but I hadn't really gotten into it because I really don't read a lot, which is probably not good to say to all of you guys.
On these channels.
I read a lot, but I don't read a lot because I read for a living as part of my job. So it was actually the movie that had got my attention because I'm very much a TV and film person. And so I had watched the movie to begin with, and it was the baseball scene that in that first movie that really got me because there were a lot of really cool special effects. And then if you watched the DVD, there was a behind the scenes of it. And so that's really what got me, which is so bizarre because most people are like, really? That's what got you?
I'm not really totally sure when I first heard about Twilight. I think it was maybe sometime in the fall of 2008, which I think was around the time that the first movie came out maybe, because I know in the spring of 2009 was my first interaction with the Twilight series. A couple of my girlfriends one weekend asked if I just wanted to come over and watch this movie, and I said sure, and it turned out to be Twilight, the very first movie. And I remember sitting and watching it, and I had no context for the series at all. I had no context for what the story was supposed to be about. I remember watching it and thinking, this is ridiculous and so dumb.
I first heard about Twilight 2008, which is when the movie came out. I read the books the summer before the movies came out. And yes, I read all of them, all 4 of them.
When Twilight came out, I wasn't really as big of a reader as I am now. Like, I read Harry Potter and some historical fiction in college, but I definitely was not into the book community. I had no idea that Twilight was a thing. And I first ever heard about it while I was at the theater watching some other movie. I have no idea what the movie was, but they ran like the Twilight teaser trailer, and it was like the clip of like the van scene where Edward saves her from being crushed by the van, and I had no idea what this movie was about, but the screen was like the long-awaited movie of the best-selling book Twilight, and I was like, long-awaited movie? Who cares about this? What is this? I've never heard of this before.
Long-awaited by who?
I don't know. I had not heard of it before, and I did go home and Google it and was like, what is this Twilight book? And it just seemed kind of dinky, in my opinion, at that time, because there was a fandom, but it seemed small, and I was like, why is everyone making such a big deal about it?
I first heard about Twilight, I'm gonna say it was summer 2008, not long before the movie came out. The people that I was volunteering with were talking about it a lot. And honestly, I really didn't know much about it outside of the cover was black and there was red. Later that year, around Christmas time, we were visiting our family and my cousin had just finished reading the book and she was going on and on about it, and she said it was so good. What sticks out in my mind about when my cousin was telling me what the book was about, she kept repeating the line, and the lion fell in love with the lamb. And I'm like, that just stuck in my mind to this day. So when I finally read the book, I was like, oh look, it's that line, I know that line. And then I was like, why in the world, who would say that? Why would you say that? It's not the good kind of cheesy, it's just bad.
So I first heard about Twilight in 2008 when the trailer came out, and I saw it on YouTube and I thought it looked like a really interesting and good movie. Now, in 2008, I was 11 years old. It was marketed like to girls who were like me, gullible, impressionable, not yet very much mature, and it was like right into my wheelhouse, so I ate that up.
I remember very clearly when I first heard about Twilight. I was in the school library with my friend Edre. We were about 12, 13 years old at the time, I think. So, you know, ideal Twilight demographic. And she was checking out Twilight, New Moon and Eclipse, and she was like, you've got to read these books. They're amazing, I'll lend them to you. I got through Twilight in like a day.
When I was 14 years old, my best friend Kristen called me up and she was just like, Kayla Rain, you have to read this book, it's so amazing. It has like vampires and action scenes and it's so cool and it's like a love story. And I, of course, was just like, yeah, give me that, like I'll totally read it. So she brought the copy to school and I got it, and I was just so intrigued immediately by the cover just because it was gorgeous. Like, I still think the Twilight cover is so beautiful. It still draws me in, even though I don't even own the books anymore. I still see that first cover and I'm like, can I have it?
I distinctly remember in 8th grade being in science class. We'd have like 5 minutes before class started or 5 minutes at the end of class, and the whole row behind me was full of teenage girls, and they each had a different copy of the Twilight series. I just sat back and I was like, whoa, this is a big thing. Like literally every single person had a Twilight book. And that hadn't really happened to me in a long time, since like Harry Potter books were coming out.
Twilight is honestly a bit of a hipster moment for me because I read it, discovered it before it became super popular. I was just wandering through Walden's one day, and if you don't know what Walden's was, it was an offshoot owned by Borders Books, so that's how long ago this was. Just wandering through it, I saw Twilight, I saw this cover, picked it up, read the inside jacket flap, and I must have done that like 5 times, but I was 12, 13 years old and I just didn't have the money to spend on an $18 hardcover book, so I never bought it. But then one of my best friends bought it and I just really wanted to borrow it from her. She wouldn't let go of this book. She had probably read it 3 or 4 times back to back. It was her favorite book. She was obsessed and she wouldn't let anybody borrow her book. And I was just like, Nicole, let me borrow the book. I'll be careful with it. I'll be nice. It'll come back in perfect condition. I'll probably finish it in like 2 days. Let me borrow the book. And finally, probably after a week or 2, she finally let me borrow it.
I first got into Twilight in high school. I graduated in 2009, so somewhere my junior or senior year, I discovered Twilight. It was kind of this undergroundy, cool thing at school. You know, everybody was kind of into it, but like in a quieter, like hipstery way, which is not me trying to say that I am a hipster about Twilight, because I am not, but that's just kind of the vibe. When it first came out, it was really cool. My friend Erica showed it to me. And I loved it. I loved it at first. Head over heels for Edward Cullen.
I first heard about Twilight when I was 17 years old. I believe the first 2 books were out, maybe the first 3. And one of my very good friends said that she was addicted to the series and that I had to read this book and I was going to fall in love with it. So she lent me the first book and I flew through it in about a day, and then I went and picked up the second book. I think the third book was about to come out, so I picked that up as soon as it came out. And for the fourth book, I went to the Twilight prom release party.
Just knowing that it's 10 years old now, I guess I must have discovered Twilight when I was an upperclassman in high school. And when I first read the books, I was hooked. I was addicted.
My Twilight story begins in the fall of 2007. I was a senior in high school and I was involved with the fanlistings.org, which was an online community of listings that had fans. Like, it's before like Facebook had pages you could like and stuff. On the message boards, a lot of people talked about wanting to have to own the fan listing for Bella or Edward or Twilight or Bella and Jacob or Bella and Edward, and I was really confused as to what Twilight was, period. And so I went and read the synopsis for the books, like, just to see what they were about. And I was like, oh, it's a vampire story. And back then, and even now, I have no interest in a vampire story. But I was like, you know what? People have such strong opinions about this, and I feel like I'm siding with those that don't like Twilight, but I don't want to make a baseless judgment. Maybe I'll read the books and love them. Maybe I'll read the books and dislike them, but at least that way I'll have something to back up my claim of not liking it. Like, I tried reading it, you know?
I first heard about Twilight when I was at the public library. I literally saw these books just sitting there and I was like, ooh, vampires, that sounds awesome. So I picked them up and I kind of liked them right away.
So I was a senior in college when I first heard about Twilight. It had already been out for a little over a year, and this puts me at around 21 years old. And at this point in my life, I was hugely into the paranormal genre. I was reading the Sookie Stackhouse books, I was reading Anita Blake, I was reading Mercy Thompson, Kim Harrison's Dead Witch Walking series. So when I heard about Twilight, I was pretty excited for it because I'd never really heard of a YA paranormal series, aside from like L.J. Smith's The Vampire Diaries, which I didn't really like, actually.
When the books first came out, I just wanted to read them because I wanted to know what the heck everyone was talking about. I had a long time been a fan of vampires. I love Anne Rice books, I love The Vampire Slayer, so it was just a fun thing about vampires that I wanted to read.
I was introduced to Twilight by a coworker years ago, and this was kind of when the fourth book had already come out, but the movies were still kind of a year away. And that's when I kind of got into the whole Twilight books. I had recently been reading, or a couple years before that I had read stories about vampires and werewolves in a series. It was an urban fantasy series about vampires and werewolves and kind of, you know, all these other mythical creatures. So I went into Twilight actually not knowing absolutely anything what it was about. I had absolutely no idea. I went in blindly. I was just told by this coworker, you need to read these books. They are awesome, so I went and I bought it because I trusted her.
So I had discovered BookTube in 2010, and a few years later, everybody was still kind of talking about Twilight as the series was ending. And I decided to finally take a look at the book, you know, take a look at the source material. All the movies had been coming out, and they were all getting terrible reviews, and people were saying horrible things about all of them. So I wanted to know if that was really a fair interpretation. So I picked up the first book, my sister had it, and I read the first 200 pages in the matter of a few hours.
I think I read the book in like 2 or 3 days, and the moment I finished it on the way to school on the bus, I just immediately flipped back to the beginning and started right over again, and then I gave it back to my friend that day at school because I knew she wanted it back, but then I finally just spent my own money and bought myself a copy so I could finish my reread of this book.
But that brings me to when I read the book, which was about a week ago. So my experience is limited.
I read it when I was 14 years old, a freshman in high school, and I became slightly obsessed.
I first read it again when I was 11, like right after I saw the movie. I loved it because I was 11 and I didn't know yet how to read critically, so I kind of didn't pay attention to what was really going on.
I eventually, you know, find out halfway through the first book that it's about vampires, and I started loving it, and then eventually in book 2 found out about the werewolves and was just completely hooked at that point because vampires and werewolves again. I loved vampires and werewolves. I need to keep reading these because to me at that point they were awesome and I was loving them.
My friend recommended Twilight to me a long time ago, and I looked at it and there was just a certain phrase in the first chapter that was like, Oregon is some crazy green alien world, and just something about it was really off, so I did not finish that book. Like, I think I looked at it and then just set it back down at my friend's house. A few years later, I was killing time before school started. On impulse, I was like, I'm gonna read the entire Twilight series in 4 days before class started. So I borrowed a friend's set and I just jumped in.
I remember reading the first one night before bed. It was a school night and I only went through like 50 pages in. And as I shut the book, I remember like picking up the book, holding it, looking at it, reading the back again, putting it down and being like, is this the book everyone online is going crazy over?
So I remember actually coming home from break. I was on winter break from college and I went to Barnes & Noble and I saw Twilight, and I think New Moon was out at this point too, but it had only just come out. But I only picked up Twilight because I wasn't really sure if I was gonna like it. So that night I went home, I got in the bath, I grabbed Twilight and I started reading, and I stayed in the bath for like 3 hours. I finished that book in the bathtub.
That's it for us this week. Join us again next week when we talk about the Twilight fandom and how people interacted with it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon.
This was the first fandom that I was ever really a part of. I had watched some TV shows that have large fandoms, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I never really participated in fandom. I didn't really fathom that other people were also consuming this thing.